chiropractors, I want to talk about the importance of pricing in this one. So recently there have been a couple of chiropractors who come to me who they're just not making enough profit at the end of the day. And a lot of that is honestly due to their pricing. And so I wanted to go ahead and talk about this. If you don't know, my name's Gavin. I'm with Central Health Supply. Basically, we help chiropractors with the business side of things and growing their practice so that they can focus on being doctors while, obviously still growing their practice. And pricing is a big part of that. And so I wanted to go ahead and touch on this. Number one, why does this matter? Well, pricing is the number one lever on profitability. There's a lot of studies out there that show that pricing is the number one lever on profitability. I believe it's a 1%, if I recall correctly, it's a 1% increase in price can lead to an 11% increase in profitability. That's pretty crazy. Basically, pricing compared to everything else of like getting more customers, all that stuff, pricing was the number one thing that impacted profitability. And so profit is what keeps the business, the practice running. And obviously, inflation keeps going up, which means profit keeps going down if you don't raise your prices. And so, as an example, a very real example from one of the chiropractors I was talking to, they have not raised their prices in a very long time. And they take insurance. And so it used to be insurance on every single appointment. That I think pretty much every single appointment was insurance. It wasn't necessarily cash based, but every single insurance was usually like $1 to $2 in order to actually get the insurance filing. Well, that had gone up with what they were using because of inflation to $10, which ended up being about 20 to 25% of their actual appointment price. And so automatically you're down 20 to 25% in profitability just from those insurance filings, which, again, inflation is going to keep going up, which means if you don't keep up with inflation, their profit's going to keep going down. And if your practice isn't profitable, then it's hard to keep it running, which means it's hard to keep serving patients and the community. And so long term, if you want to make the biggest impact, you have to make sure that you are profitable so that you can keep the business running, so you can keep helping people. I don't think there's necessarily anything, obviously in the healthcare industry, there's a lot of stuff on this where profitability is seen as evil. Well, you don't have to be so profitable that you're greedy, but you do have to be profitable enough that you can actually continue to help people and stay in business. Because if you're completely out of business, you're not going to be helping anyone. So profitability is important, and therefore pricing is important. So what should your price be? That's the big question here. So if you've not raised prices in years, it's worth it just plug your price into an inflation calculator and just see what it says. And so if you were really profitable back then, you may just need to raise prices to the equivalent level, now. So if, let's say you were $40 in price, a couple years ago, and you plug it into an inflation calculator, it says you're now at 60. If you're not as profitable now, you just got to raise it to $60. I mean, that's it. It's pretty simple if you just plug it into an inflation calculator. If you'd like to go a little bit deeper, this is part two of what should your prices be. Otherwise, we're going to calculate the costs per hour. And so we want to calculate the stuff that goes into the actual appointments. So for this, it's staff costs, which is your front desk, your doctors, which includes yourself, and then the per appointments costs, such as insurance filings, and then multiply that by the number of appointments per hour on average. And then you add all that up, and you want to multiply them by at least 5, ideally. Ideally, that's what your price per hour should be, and then we divide that by the number of appointments you can do per hour. So as an example, let's say that we have 2 front desk people at $15 per hour, and then we have 1 doctor, just say it's yourself, at $50 an hour. And we want to make sure we calculate in our doctor costs, because we want to, if you're going to hire doctors, right, it's important to know this. And so even if it's just like, give yourself whatever it is that you would expect to hire a different doctor, maybe add a little bit extra in there just because of, maybe like insurance benefits, all that stuff. I'm just going to keep it simple here. But after that, we'll say that the per appointment cost is $20 per hour. So let's say we have 4 appointments, and maybe it's dry needling. Maybe we do dry needling every single appointment. Maybe it's insurance filings, whatever that cost is. Let's just say it's $5 per appointment. So again, the total here comes out to $100 per hour. So now if we want that to be 20% of our costs, in other words, if we want to 5x that, what we need to do is we need to multiply it by 5. And so then we get our per hour revenue should be at $500. And so if we do, let's just say five appointments per hour, we need $100 per appointment. Now, I know that sounds like a lot, but luckily your adjustments don't need to be that high. Your average per appointment price does. And so what that means is, for example, some people may decide to buy, supplements, dry needling, decompression. They might decide to buy other things that aren't just your adjustment. And so your adjustment maybe could be, maybe it's $60. And then that's kind of, I would say the average price right about now is about $60. Maybe you want to be a little bit more expensive and say it's $70 per adjustment. But then after that, if we add in supplements, dry needling, decompression, all this other stuff, we don't need everyone to buy. We just need a couple people to buy multiple of those, and then that gets us to that average $100 per appointment. So as an example, supplements, maybe they cost $20 for us to buy, and then we sell for $40, so we make $20. If our appointments, our adjustment is, let's just say it's $60, and we sell 2 supplements to every single person, then just like that, we now are at $100 per appointment. And so again, you don't have to get you can totally get your adjustments up that high, but it doesn't need to be that high if it doesn't make any sense in your area. And some people use that argument to just not raise prices at all. I don't think you should do that. I think you should look at that. Maybe you can go like $5, $10 over, and then justify that by the extra care that you give them, because now you have more profit so that you can invest in better equipment and stuff like that. But anyway, you don't need to have your adjustment, your actual adjustment, your primary, appointment thing be that high. You can have the total appointment cost with everything all calculated be that high, be the $100 in our example. So now that we know that, we should pay attention to our prices, we know what our price should be. How do we actually raise our prices? Well, we have the slow method, which is just tell people it's going up by, say $5, $10, and then raise it about once per year, once every 6 months, whatever that cadence is for you, until we're at the right price. And then the fast method is just tell people you're raising prices to the big ultimate number. And then this is if you're in a real big pinch and you need to just you have to raise prices in order to continue to be profitable and continue to, run the practice. And so if you're going to do that, you want to make sure you tell everyone and you say, hey, everyone, here's the reason we're raising this, is because you made a promise to give people the best services and the best care possible, and your current prices aren't allowing you to do that, right? Maybe you can even be honest, just say, hey, you're possibly about to run out of business. And so then you want to say, mention in the past what you've done to help with that promise, like you've invested in XYZ equipment, you've hired great people, whatever. You mention the stuff you've done in the past that is in accordance with that promise. And then after that, you'll mention how you'll be able to help with that promise with the extra money that you make from hiring. From raising prices. Sorry. So maybe you'll hire extra, great staff, you'll invest in better equipment, all that stuff. Mention all of that, and then tell them, here's the date that it is. Tell them the date that you're going to raise the price on, and say if they would like to get in before that time, you will keep the price, assuming you can. If you're losing money on every single appointment, then just raise it immediately. But if you're just not doing that, but you just have a really slim margin, then tell people, hey, we're going to raise it by this date. If you would like to get in at the old price, please come in before then. And then that way you can get hopefully a big influx of business before you raise the price, and then raising the price, and you can just continue on from there. If you'd like help with knowing what your price should be, your per hour revenue and stuff like that, if you'd like to basically go through this exercise, with us, we've done this kind of stuff for multiple chiropractors now. We've done, like I said, maybe I didn't mention it in this video, but we've done this for multiple years now. But if you'd like any help with this stuff, you can go to centralhealthsupply.com/contact and enter your info, and we can go ahead and talk about this stuff and help you get on a path to growing and having a profitable practice that helps the community. And it's not super cookie cutter. It's tailored to you and what your practice and what your community needs. So anyway, if you're interested in that, you can go to centralhealthsupply.com/contact, or I'll leave a link at the top of the description. Otherwise, I hope this is helpful, and I'll talk to you soon.